If there's one surefire way to fail at lawn care, this is it. And I see so many beginners make the same mistake over and over and over again. What people don't realize is that different types of grass have totally different needs and maintenance. That's why it's absolutely crucial that we know how to properly identify what type of grass we have in our own lawn. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to identify your grass quickly and easily, while also talking about a few strengths and weaknesses of each type. Let's go. When it comes to grass, there are two different types: cool season grass and warm season grass. Whatever you're going to have in your lawn is going to depend on what area of the country you live in. Cool season grasses prefer cooler weather, while warm season grasses prefer weather that is hot. There's also a part of the country that's called the transition zone. Here, things get a little bit more interesting. This area experiences both hot summers and cooler winters, which means neither grass is particularly happy. This also makes lawn care a little bit more of a struggle in these areas. First, we're going to talk about cool season grasses. Unlike warm season grasses, cool season grass can be somewhat difficult to identify because they all look very similar. But if you look closely, you'll see some major differences if you know what to look for. There are four common types of cool season grass: Kentucky bluegrass, turf-type tall fescue, perennial ryegrass, and fine fescue. First, let's start with Kentucky bluegrass. If you look closely at the grass blades of Kentucky bluegrass, you'll notice that they are a medium width grass, not super fat, but also not super thin. The easiest way to ID Kentucky bluegrass is by looking at the tips of the grass. Kentucky bluegrass is the only cool season grass with a canoe or boat-shaped tip. Now what that means is if you look at the blade from the side angle, it actually forms the shape of a boat. If you were to pull on the length of the grass through your fingers, the tip will actually split, leaving two small points. This is almost a surefire way to identify Kentucky bluegrass. Kentucky bluegrass is also the only cool season grass that will spread over time. So if you've ever noticed that you had a dirt patch or a dead area of grass slowly come back or filled in your lawn, odds are you have Kentucky bluegrass. Now, one of the pros of Kentucky bluegrass is that it's a very durable grass. It can handle wear and tear very well. That means it's the perfect grass type for kids and pets. Now, it's not invincible by any means, but it does handle a moderate beating when it comes to foot traffic. Another positive, and probably the best thing about Kentucky bluegrass, is that it has rhizomes, which means it self-repairs. Having a grass that can repair itself is invaluable in lawn care. That means you don't really have to overseed, dead spots will slowly fix themselves, and that means way less work for you, the homeowner. Now, Kentucky bluegrass isn't the perfect grass by any means. One of the negatives is that it's super high maintenance. It needs more water than any other cool season grass, or it easily goes into dormancy. It also has a high hunger for nitrogen, which means you're going to have to apply fertilizer more often to keep it looking good and healthy. The last thing is that it doesn't do great in the shade. Kentucky bluegrass loves the sun, so those of you with a shady area may want to look at a different choice. The next grass we're going to talk about is turf-type tall fescue. But first, let me interrupt the video very quickly to thank our sponsor, BetterHelp. I thought BetterHelp would be a great sponsor for the video because mental health has played a big role in my life. And I'm not gonna lie to you, working a full-time job, keeping up on the lawn, freelancing, running a YouTube channel, and trying to be a great father and husband all at the same time is beyond stressful. But luckily there's services out there like BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you just go to their site. You can use my link here. Then you just answer a few questions. BetterHelp will then match you with a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or computer, video chat or messaging, however you feel most comfortable. You'll be matched with a therapist usually within 48 hours so you can get started fast. Visit betterhelp.com/lawnlife or choose Lawn Life during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Now let's get back to the video. The next grass we're going to talk about is turf-type tall fescue. The first thing you're going to notice about this grass is that it has thick grass blades. Now, some of the newer varieties have been bred to keep the blades a little slimmer, but most older varieties are going to be very thick. The surefire way to identify that you have tall fescue is to look at the veins on the leaf blade. Tall fescue has multiple veins that are evenly spaced running throughout the grass blade. There's also not a prominent vein going down the center like most other cool season grasses. Here's an example of Kentucky bluegrass with only one prominent vein in the center compared to turf-type tall fescue. There's a huge difference between these two, and it's easy to identify your tall fescue this way. Tall fescue is also a clumping type grass, so that means it will not spread. Here's what tall fescue looks like among Kentucky bluegrass that went dormant. Now, some of the positives about turf type tall fescue is that it handles heat extremely well. It's one of the only cool season grasses that can actually handle the transition zone because of this. It also does not need as much water as other cool season grasses, which makes it great for those without irrigation systems. Now that doesn't mean you can go a whole summer without giving it any kind of water, but it definitely does the best of any cool season grass when it comes to drought resistance. Some of the cons of turf type tall fescue is that number one, it's the lightest grass of all the cool season grasses. Now before I get blown up in the comments, yes, there are some varieties of turf type tall fescue that have been bred to be darker these days. But for the most part, the varieties are going to be much lighter than perennial ryegrass and slightly lighter than Kentucky bluegrass. Turf type tall fescue also has a much coarser texture than other cool season lawns, meaning the blades are thicker, wider, and have a hard feel to the touch. That also means walking on the grass barefoot won't be as pleasant. And because turf type tall fescue doesn't spread, that also means that it may have to be overseeded every couple of years because there will eventually be some die-off over time. Turf type tall fescue is the hardiest of all the cool season grasses, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have any drawbacks. Next, we'll move on to perennial ryegrass. Perennial ryegrass is probably the hardest cool season grass to identify because there aren't many distinct features like other cool season grasses. Perennial ryegrass usually has leaves that are very fine, narrow, and soft to the touch. It also has one prominent midrib that runs down the middle with other small veins running parallel to it. The one unique feature that perennial ryegrass has is that the top of the leaf is usually a matte green like other grasses, but if you turn it over, the bottom will be a shiny and glossy finish. In my opinion, this is the easiest way to identify perennial ryegrass. Now, usually in the United States, you will only find 100% perennial ryegrass lawns in the Pacific Northwest. Everywhere else, perennial ryegrass is usually mixed in with other cool season grasses. The reason why is because the grass is very finicky when it comes to whether it will actually tolerate. It won't tolerate freezing cold temps, and it will also die off if it gets too hot. Now, the reason people love to overseed perennial ryegrass is because, for one, it germinates very quickly. You can have germination in as little as 3 to 4 days compared to Kentucky bluegrass that takes 14 to 21 days. The other reason is because perennial ryegrass is naturally the darkest cool season grass. So if you want your lawn to pop, adding this type of grass is a sure way to do that. Now, the other major con to perennial ryegrass, other than its finicky temp conditions, is that it grows in clumps like turf type tall fescue. It does not spread, so that makes reseeding or overseeding a must when it dies off. The last cool season grass I'm going to talk about is fine fescue. I'm going to keep it short because it's very easy to identify and it really only holds one purpose. Fine fescue is identified by how thin the grass blades are. They're almost like pieces of hair sticking out of the ground. And if it gets too long, it will lay down flat and almost have a wavy effect to it. It's by far the ugliest of the cool season grass types, but people put it down when all else fails to get ground cover in very shady areas. This grass can survive extreme areas of shade, and honestly, I feel like that's all it should be used for. Now, the crazy thing about all these cool season grasses is that they all can be mixed together into one cool season lawn. So it may be possible that you have all 4 of these grasses in your lawn, but it's also possible that you only have 1 or 2 of these mixed together. Now, for those of you in the transition zone, the only cool season grass you are likely to have is turf type tall fescue. The other cool season grasses just cannot survive the heat in those areas. So most people in the transition zone and below are going to have warm season grasses. And for those grasses, I'm going to pass it over to my buddy TJ, who runs a great warm season lawn channel called The Lawn Dad. Take it away, TJ.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate you having me on here. So today, hopefully I'm going to show you a couple tips on how to identify a warm season grass type. Now, to start off, there are a lot of different varieties of warm season grass, but today I'll be talking about Bermuda, which is the most common, Zoysia, St. Augustine, and Centipede. So hopefully by the end of my session, you'll be able to figure out which one is which and what is in your yard. So the first cultivar that we're going to be talking about today is Bermuda. One of my favorites. It's exactly what I have in my yard. It's also one of the most popular cultivars in the South. So odds are, if you have no idea what you have, you might have Bermuda, and that might be right. But let's get into some specifics. So Bermuda is a very fast growing grass. It does grow laterally via rhizomes and stolons, which rhizomes are underneath the ground and stolons are above the ground. But the 4 cultivars that we are talking about today also grow that same way. It is extremely fast. It's a lot faster than any other cultivar that we're talking about. So if you have garden beds and you have grass that's growing up into them very swiftly, very quickly, it's probably going to be Bermuda. But let's talk even more specific. So Bermuda is very wispy. It's not firm at all. you can definitely move it. You can definitely tell that it's a lighter grass. It also is usually going to be the thinnest grass that we're talking about. Typically the Zoysias, the Centipedes, St. Augustines are going to be wider blades. Bermuda's probably, for the most part, going to be your thinnest blade. It does come to a point, and it does have a silvery hue depending on the light if you hold up the blade. If you do let it grow longer, you'll start seeing seed heads pop out. Now, the reason why I bring that up is Zoysia only has one seed head. Bermuda has at least 3, between 3 and 7 seed heads. So if you start seeing seed heads pop up, but if you see at least 3 of them, then it's a dead giveaway that it is Bermuda. One huge pro to Bermuda, it's self-healing, it's very fast growing. If it gets damaged, it's quick to repair. If it gets a fungus, you put a fungicide on it, it's very quick to repair itself. However, it does not do shade well. If you have Bermuda and you're trying to grow it in shade, it does not like shade whatsoever. That could also be its identifier. If you have a large tree in your yard and your grass sort of stops in the shadow, you probably have Bermuda. So the second cultivar that we're going to be covering, and the second most popular grass in the transition zone and also in the southern zone, is Zoysia grass. Zoysia grass is an extremely utilitarian grass that can be grown in a lot of different scenarios. This is why some people prefer Zoysia grass over Bermuda grass. The biggest difference is it can tolerate shade better than the 3 other cultivars that I would be talking about today, but including Bermuda grass. Zoysia grass has a little bit stiffer of a leaf compared to Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is very wispy. Zoysia grass is a little bit stiffer. So hopefully that helps you distinguish between those two at least. The third most popular grass type that you would find in the transition zone or in the southern growing zone is going to be St. Augustine. St. Augustine is going to be the thickest grass type that we talk about. St. Augustine loves the heat. That's why you would find it more popular in the Florida, Texas regions. However, it is the only one that loves to be mowed higher than about 2 inches. Usually people keep St. Augustine mowed between 3 and 4 inches because of how thick the blades are. These blades are very thick. Now, one big identifier besides the big thick blades are going to be the rounded tip at the end of the blade. So if you have a grass in your yard that's very wide but also has a rounded tip, odds are it's going to be St. Augustine. So that brings us to our fourth and final grass type that you might find in your yard in a transition zone or in the southern growing zones, centipede. Centipede grass used to be one of the most popular grasses. It has phased out a little bit more just because most people are going towards the Bermuda or the Zoysia. If you have an older house that was built maybe in the 40s, 50s, 60s, typically you may still have centipede grass still hanging around. Centipede grass, much like Zoysia grass, it does have a little bit thicker of a blade. The biggest giveaway on centipede grass that I have found, that leaf is folded right in half, so it looks a lot like a boat. Zoysia grass, Bermuda grass, St. Augustine grass don't really have a consistent folding in the leaves. Another dead giveaway, and the biggest difference between St. Augustine, which it often is confused as, off of the stolons, the leaves when they grow out of it are in a very distinct stair-stepping pattern. That is going to be the biggest difference between St. Augustine and centipede. That stair-stepping pattern is very consistent. Bermuda, Zoysia, all stair-step a little bit, but there are differences in the left side versus the right side. However, centipede grass, it is extremely consistent, one right after another. It makes it look like, you guessed it, a centipede. The biggest downfall of centipede, and the reason why it hasn't made it all these years and other grass types are sort of taking over, is centipede really can't hold up to the modern day chemicals that are being used on the grass to get rid of weeds. Pre-emergence, post-emergence, you have to use at a much lower rate compared to a Bermuda or a Zoysia. So if lawn cares are having to take care of it, they have to take special care of centipede grass versus Bermuda grass and Zoysia grass. So hopefully that helps you identify maybe some centipede grass in your yard. Thanks, Jesse, for allowing me to be on your channel. I hope that was very helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, I'm always here to answer it. Jesse's also here to answer it. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot.
Now for you cool season people, if you're looking for some of the darkest grass seed you can put in your lawn, visit thelawnlife.com. They have some of the darkest grass seed you can find online at great prices. And if you want to know how to germinate that seed as fast as possible, watch this video right here. I'll see you guys over there. Now get off my lawn.